More on the perspective on that. An old friend, but still a friend. There's someone that was here in Cleveland for a little while, James Rapien, who works for Sports Illustrated or SI.com. Welcome back home. I had to let everybody know that you're still alive and in Ohio. What's up, James?
What's up, Andre? I appreciate you having me.
Not a problem. You get to go home and cover the Bengals. You know them well. You've known them for a while. How odd has it been to be back, especially in covering a team under the circumstances that we're under right now?
Certainly odd. Absolutely, because I've met Joe Burrow like I'm talking to you right now. I still haven't met him in person. Same thing goes for Zach Taylor and really a lot of the new Bengals players that they've acquired over the past couple of years. But like I told you, I'm just excited to be covering sports in 2020. We didn't know 6 months ago how it would be. So if I have to mask up or do Zoom calls, I'll do it. And I'll do it with a smile.
I hear you. Hey, half the time we're smiling, they can't see it because you're masked up. Trust me, there are a couple of Indians games I wanted to put you on a Zoom because I didn't want to ask the questions that we had to ask. We'll get to that. We'll get to that later. Burrow, as you said, you haven't been able to meet him, but you know his story, like we all know his story. And there's so much pressure put upon this kid. But from the outside looking in, James, it looks like he's handling it pretty well.
No doubt about it. From draft night, when he was peppered by questions from local media for 35 minutes and was really poised and calm, and then he had his interview with ESPN and all the national interviews and stuff. From there on, virtual meetings, all of that, you talk about not meeting people. He hadn't met A.J. Green until August 1st and some of these key veterans. And yet he's been able to not only build a rapport with them and earn their respect, but command the offense. Much like you saw in week 2, he's making checks at the line of scrimmage. He's kind of running the show and making the right calls. And he's going to make his mistakes because he's a rookie quarterback. But I don't know how you can't watch him and be impressed with what he's done, considering the circumstances and this roster and what he has to work with. I think it's been a really good performance so far through 6 weeks.
Yeah, you mentioned A.J. Green, and look, we've all watched A.J. Green. He's been a top 3 receiver for literally, it seems like a decade. Obviously, things are a little bit different right now. Do you think they got off to a slow start because they didn't meet till August 1st and because A.J. hasn't played a lot of football in the last 2 years? But it looks like the last 2 weeks, they look like they're getting something that's working.
Yeah, last week they certainly did. He had 8 receptions. It was the most receptions he had since week 3 of 2017. And I know he's missed some time, but that's a really long time to go without having 8 catches. Had 96 yards, still looking for his first touchdown of the season. But yeah, they hit rock bottom in week 5 against the Ravens. His effort was questioned by media here after he was kind of lollygagging on an interception that Joe Burrow threw, and he responded well. And I think that's the key here. A.J. Green might not be the guy that you saw 5 years ago, but he's absolutely someone who can still be a productive player. And Cleveland saw arguably the worst of him. He was targeted 13 times in week 2, only had 3 receptions, 29 yards. I'd expect him to look much better. I don't know how productive he's going to be. I certainly don't think he's going to get 13 targets, but I would expect him to look much better this Sunday at Paul Brown Stadium.
Yeah, the game of football is weird because sports in general, especially with the player that we hold him to a different, we expect him to be A.J. Green of 6-7 years ago, and that may not come back, right? But at the same time, you expect him, because I saw bits and pieces of that Baltimore game, and you're like, this isn't how he wants to go out. You know what I mean? Like, he's better than this.
And one of his mentors is Larry Fitzgerald. I know he leaned on Fitzgerald after that. And look at how Larry's kind of evolved. Yeah. He's not the explosive player we remember from 07, 08, 09, but he's still making catches in that Arizona offense and kind of transitioned to more of a role player, slot guy. And AJ isn't there yet. I think he can certainly be more effective. But when you have a mentor like that, and you have AJ Green's attitude, which has very, very much been team first, and a quiet assassin almost. He's not a guy that talks a lot. So I think he will rebound and have a quality season. And who knows if he sticks around in Cincinnati or not. But I certainly think the coaching staff likes him, and they would like to see him have success here for the remainder of the season.
James, the next step for the Bengals after drafting Joey Burrow was to get him a receiver in the second round. And it looks like this guy may be – I like when teams do this. Pair him up early and let him learn. And it looks like that's working so far for the Bengals.
It's exactly what they did in 2011.
Yeah.
They took A.J. Green 4th overall, Andy Dalton 35th overall. That worked out, so why not try it again? So Burrow 1st overall, T. Higgins 33rd, and you're right. I mean, he's playing well right now. Had a 67-yard touchdown catch last week. It was their longest play of the season, a double move. He's really starting to come into his own, and that's one of the big differences in this matchup versus when the Bengals and Browns played earlier this season, is that Higgins is almost the 1A receiver along with Tyler Boyd. You're going to see him a lot. He's capable of making contested catches. We've seen it over the past few weeks now. So the Bengals love him. They're using him all over the field. Don't be surprised if they hand the ball off to him, run a reverse to him, different things like that. But he's certainly a weapon. And the results so far have been promising through 6 weeks.
James, let's look at the injury list. Obviously, each team has some different things going on. Geno Atkins, I feel like I've been covering I feel like Geno Atkins has been playing since Ickey Woods retired. Like, I feel like he's been there forever. I just know they've got some key players that are banged up this week. I know the running back, who's looked great as well, Mixon. Just where are they at injury-wise going into this game?
There's 2 huge injuries, and you mentioned the one, Joe Mixon, dealing with a foot injury. He was dancing at practice today, but he did not practice. So he was limited when it comes to the dancing, but didn't practice when it comes to the football. So we'll see if he's able to suit up. He returned to the Colts game on Sunday after injuring that foot. So I do think he'll be able to go, but that's just me guessing. We'll see more and know more tomorrow when that game report comes out. But really the big injury, and I don't think he's going to be able to play, is William Jackson III. He's been great. Outside of week 2, when Odell Beckham Jr. burnt him a couple times, Jackson's been really good this season. He's clearly the Bengals' top corner. He suffered a concussion last Sunday. And Andre, as you know, it's really hard for a player to suffer a concussion and then play the very next week. It happens once in a while, but not often. He hasn't practiced this week, so I wouldn't expect him, which means this Bengals team probably going to have to double Odell and bracket coverage him, and then that means more running lanes for Kareem Hunt. So I think that's a really big loss. You mentioned Geno Atkins. He was limited today. He's played the past couple of weeks. Going to play on Sunday. I'm not sure if he's going to play a full allotment of snaps. He's been kind of limited over the past couple of weeks, so we could see that again this Sunday against the Browns.
James, did I read right that there is like Dunlap and Atkins were kind of not complaining about their snaps, basically? But I guess let me ask this in a twofold question. Those guys have been around for a while. They've established themselves. They're pros. They've earned their keep. They've earned their stripes, no pun intended. But obviously, Zach Taylor and where the Bengals are at, they're going to have to, they're going to pass on those guys at some point. How's the transition kind of going from Geno's team to Joe Burrow's team a little bit right now?
It's certainly awkward, and I think more so for Carlos Dunlap, a guy whose role has been diminished some, and he's clearly been demoted. The coaches did demote him. He's not going to start on Sunday, which to me is like, wow, right? But he hasn't started the past couple of weeks. Was used in an odd outside linebacker role where he's covering running back some, which that's the last thing I want if I'm the Bengals is Carlos Dunlap on Kareem Hunt.
Yeah.
So if you're the Browns, find a way to get that done, right? But yeah, I think it is awkward. It's the awkward phase where Carlos Dunlap might be declining a bit and unhappy with his role, or flip it, the coaches are just unhappy with his effort. And I think that's what it really is. And we'll see if he can get back that starting job. But I don't think you're going to see as much of him as you're used to when you see this matchup. As for Geno Atkins, the coaches insist it's an injury thing, and it has nothing to do with him. And they've had about 52 injuries to their defensive tackles in that interior this year. No joke. A DJ Reader out for the year. Mike Daniels was just activated from IR. I'm not sure if he'll be able to go. So they would love to get Geno out there, 40, 50 snaps. And if his shoulder allows him to, it caused him to miss 4 games to start the year. If he's, able to do that, I think that they'll have him in there on Sunday.
One thing, James, when we watched these two teams play back in week 2 that stood out to me about the Bengals is that they didn't give up. They didn't roll over. That was a Thursday night game where easily, probably in about the early in the fourth quarter, they could have tipped their hat. And I gave Burrow and company a lot of credit that they pushed it to the very end of the game. We've seen them come back. They're up 21-0 last week against a Colts team that we thought was really good that we saw the week before. I don't know a lot about Zach Taylor. I don't think the whole world knows a lot about Zach Taylor. He kind of came in last year as, he's one of the wonder kids that was coaching with the Rams. And then I guess what I'm asking is Zach Taylor kind of establishing who he wants to be as a head coach right now in your eyes?
I think he's trying to, and he says a lot of the right things. But 3-18-1 is really hard to overcome. Week 1, they should have beat the Chargers, and they came up short for a variety of reasons. Not necessarily Zach Taylor's fault, but they came up short. And we've seen that pattern. Andre, he's 1-11-1 in one-score games since taking over as Bengals head coach. So you could look at that as, oh, well, they're overachieving and they're competing. Right. And like you said, they're really trying and not giving up. On the flip side, can you win some of these games? And I think that's where a lot of fans are at this point. So, yeah, I think he is building a culture. I think most of these guys respect him and are fighting and playing hard for him. But at some point, you can't give up the 21-point lead. Right. You got to go down and score the game-winning touchdown, whether it's week 1, week 3 against the Eagles, which ended up in a tie, last week against the Colts when they took the lead and you had the ball with a chance to win. So I do think winning over the next couple of weeks, and it's going to be hard. They have the Browns, then the Titans next week, then a bye, then the Steelers. Ooh. And you guys just saw the Steelers and what they can do. So it's a really tough month here for the Bengals. So dropping that game against Indy, I think this one this Sunday, whether it's fair or not, is as close to a must-win as you can have for a team that's clearly rebuilding, just to keep the mood up, because it's really hard. As you know, the Browns have dealt with this in the past. If you're losing games, it's hard to keep the locker room together.
Yeah, it is. And, I used to make a big deal. We would make a big deal usually about, hey, there's fans at the games. Is the number of fans there I think it is making a difference. I'm going to be honest. At first, I was like, 5,000, 6,000, that's not going to do anything. But after doing a whole baseball season with cardboard cutouts next to me, 2 fans is better than none. Will that help the Bengals this weekend?
I think it certainly could. And I am kind of curious how many Browns fans make the trip, right. How many Browns fans are in the stadium. That'll be interesting. As we know, the state of Ohio allowing 12,000 on Sunday. I think it'll be less than that. From what I've heard, the Bengals aren't going to go the full 12,000 just for social distancing. But I do think it makes a difference, and it does give you somewhat of an atmosphere. Because, week 1 against the Chargers, I was at Paul Brown Stadium, and outside of the 40 media members or whatever it was, there was no one there, and it's a weird, eerie feeling. I couldn't imagine a baseball game. That's even more quiet and really, that'd be weird.
James, I'm telling you, brother, we had a doubleheader like the week and a half into the season. And, you're so excited to finally get the season started because the year's been so crazy or whatever else. And we're in between, and we had the last night, 18-inning doubleheader of the year. And I'm sitting in Progressive Field. I've grown up in Northeast Ohio. I've watched this part. And suddenly, in between games, I'm looking around me, and dude, it was like being in. It was the most eerie thing ever because I'm like, there's nobody else here. And then you start talking to players, and players are just like, I got Lindor to admit by then. He was like, I hate it. He goes, I'm sick of looking at cardboard. It makes a difference. Now I know in baseball, it makes a difference. Some guys, you know this. Some guys play to the crowd, man. They like having their girlfriend there or their butt, And I think football is like that too. So I'm glad that, look, I don't want to break rules or anything else, but I'm glad that we're trying to have some people there because we're learning in 2020. Atmosphere and fans, they do matter during a game.
No doubt about it. And I'm with you. Obviously, you want to be safe. And we always have to preface it with that. Right. But you absolutely want to have fans there. And I do think that the players, imagine doing an end zone dance in front of your teammates and that's it. Right. I mean, that's so awkward because most of these players played in the SEC, right? Or one of these big conferences where it's 100,000. I mean, Joe Burrow's talked about that last year. He's used to playing in front of 100,000 fans. Wow. 6,000 or 12,000 is much better than 0. Yeah. So I think it would be really weird to have to get hyped for a game without any fans. And even some is much better than none.
I had somebody tell me that you could tell that nobody's been allowed to go to the clubs because all the touchdown dances are from last year.
James. See, I wouldn't know. I can't keep up with that stuff. So I wouldn't know.
Me either, to be honest with you. I don't even know. You know what? To be honest, after what we've gone through the last year, I don't even know what it would be like to go into a club. Anytime I see more than 5 people, I'm like, I think I'm in the wrong place. I got to go.
That's absolutely right. I'm dodging them.
Yeah. Hey, man, I miss you. I hope you're doing well. I'm proud of you. We're watching you from down here. It was a ball having you here, but I'm sure this is a dream for you to be back down there doing what you're doing. So keep up the great work, buddy.
Andre, I appreciate the kind words. Thanks for always being there for me, and thanks for having me on.
You got it. Keep up the great work.